I think we've all felt overwhelmed at some point in our lives, and to be totally honest, feeling overwhelmed simply sucks. It entails being completely overcome by an intense and unruly emotion that something is too challenging to manage and overcome. And when confronted with being overwhelmed, it can be difficult to think and act rationally and even function in a normal way. However, the feeling of being overwhelmed is simply a reaction of our body's survival system. It is seen by the brain as a threat to one's ability to survive. It can either see that threat of scarcity, thoughts about not having enough time, not having enough energy, or not having enough magical ability to fit everything in 24 hours. Or it can see the threat of failing, the threat of disappointing others, or the threat of feeling incapable. And though the survival response was very useful in a time when we were hunting, it now often leads to negative short-term or even long-term health effects. For instance, some of the short-term health effects can be anxiety and panic attacks. And over the course of time, these effects can then result into the form of depression, fatigue, and a long list of chronic diseases. I have dealt with a lot of anxiety myself, and over the years and through my studies, I've created a few ways that help me deal with feelings of overwhelm. And though it won't get rid of it, it can help you manage these feelings and help you stop them turning into feelings of anxiety or depression. Hola, my name is Shannon and I'm a Dutch health scientist living in Australia. And on this channel, I share my journey of chasing my dreams and goals and becoming the best version of myself, as well as tips and tricks on what I've learned as a health scientist. And today's video, I'm sharing 3 tips on what to do when you're feeling overwhelmed. To dive right into it, tip number 1 is the most practical and is to ground yourself in the present by using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. So often when we feel overwhelmed, we become completely submerged by our thoughts and emotions about all of our life's current problems, to the point where we lack efficacy and feel frozen or even paralyzed at sometimes. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique is a technique that helps you shift focus when you're feeling overwhelmed, and it works as follows. First, you look around and you name 5 things that you can see from where you are. Then you listen and name 4 things you can hear. And once you've done that, you name 3 things that you can touch, like a warm cup of tea or the feeling of your feet in your shoes. And then you name 2 things that you can smell. Maybe you can smell your cup of tea, or maybe you're holding a book and you can smell the pages of that book. And then finally, you name something that you can taste, like a sip of cold water, or even just a taste of your own mouth. So this is a simple technique that you can use when you feel overwhelmed, and it's focused on mindfulness. It helps to interrupt the overwhelm by doing 2 things. First, it helps you ground in your senses and the present moment. And second, by keeping track of the counting and working your way through your senses, it helps to interrupt spinning thoughts. Tip number 2 is to challenge your perfectionism. Perfectionism can lead us to make tasks or projects bigger than they need to be, which in turn can lead to procrastination and psychological distress. I'm for sure a big perfectionist, and it's not always easy to accept that. However, in times when I feel overwhelmed, I tell myself to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and to put things into perspective. Because as things pile up, the sense of overwhelm grows, which can then lead to more procrastination and more overwhelm. So it's important to know when good is good enough, and I do this by asking myself, what is the marginal benefit of spending more time on this task or project? And if the answer to the question is very little, then I simply stop where I am and then I'm done with it. And part of this is also recognizing that we cannot do everything perfectly, which means that we, for instance, have to accept that sometimes an email will be overlooked, and that if it's important enough, the other person will follow up on that email. So this means that sometimes we simply have to let things go that are not as important as we make them believe they are. The final tip is to rethink your to-do list. If you're like me, then you like to make to-do lists and you pretty much live by them. For me, it's a simple method that helps me be more productive and efficient with my time than if I were to simply not write anything down. But as always, there are two sides of the coin, and if you don't have a realistic to-do list, meaning you have this long list of tasks with no order, then you risk the possibility of making yourself feel overwhelmed. So one thing that I always like to do in these cases is to categorize or chunk my tasks so that there's more order. For instance, put all your phone calls together or all your online tasks together. And this way it helps you to make a long list more cohesive, more efficient, and by extension, less overwhelming. But another method is to write out your list in accordance with your schedule. So plan big projects for the morning when you have the most energy and focus, and schedule brainless tasks for later in the day, such as responding to emails, when you're more tired and struggling with decision fatigue. I hope these tips were helpful and can help you deal with feelings of overwhelm like they've helped me in the past. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, because I'll be making videos like this every week and I promise you, you don't want to miss them. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.